Hi everyone, Dr. Nicole LePera, the holistic psychologist here. So today's video is on a topic that I get a lot of questions about, ego and ego work. So first I'm going to take us through what the ego is, what ego work is, and how to get started. So first and foremost, this ego, we each have one. What is it? It's a part of our self-identity that has been internalized based on our very real lived experiences. For most of us, this begins in childhood. So I'm going to use an example to illustrate. Say as a little child, we find something that just lights us up. We're so interested in it. Different for each of us. Some of us, it might be art, some of us sports, dancing, whatever. We find that thing and we have the experience of, we're glowing, we're excited, and we're in the presence of one of our caregivers. And if that caregiver responds, maybe they don't respond at all. Maybe they just kind of ignore us and our excitement, or maybe as we approach and try to show them how excited we are, they're a little bit detached, they're not there. Maybe they even respond negatively. Negative could even mean, don't get too excited, calm down, don't yell, dad's sleeping. Or we're not interested in that. That's not who we are as a family. And I'm just throwing out many examples. As a little child, that hurts. That causes a pain, that doesn't feel like we're accepted and that our interests are accepted in that moment. So what do? We are incredibly adaptive. So we learn. Meaning, chances are over time, we're going to show interest in that particular thing or similar things less and less to avoid that same hurt. That's what we call as a shadow. Doesn't mean that that art or that dance or that music or whatever it is isn't still part of who we are or our interest in that. Of course it is. It just means that we learn not to show up in the world, because what we've registered is we don't get love in the way that we want love if we show up in the world with that. This could happen on the opposite end too, where because we're so attuned and adaptive as children, we learn the positive ways that we get unconditional love or acceptance, or what we feel to be unconditional love, and we learn how to show up as that. So for me, that became achievement, school, athletic. I learned that that's how I got the reception from my parents, the accolades and the validation, ultimately the love. Probably why I went to school for so goddamn long and got a PhD. But I do love the topic and I love the work I'm doing. But just an example. So that's how we carry that into adulthood. I became a human who really looked to seek validation in myself from achieving. So as part of my healing journey, I had to learn to get validation in other ways. Something I want you to understand as I'm going into what ego then work is our ego is protecting us. It is not something that we want to get rid of or kill, or probably not even something that will ultimately go away. It's there for a reason, and it becomes activated in moments to protect us, to keep us safe. So what is ego work then? Ego work is really a practice that takes time, but it's a practice of beginning to observe the ego as separate from the authentic self, to be able to separate who I really am, so the authentic me that contains all of the positive things and all of the things that I came to believe were a shadow of myself, coming to accept it all and to understand that the ego is there to protect me. So how do we begin? I love the practice of naming the ego. The act of naming it, so my ego's name happens to be Tiffany. So when I sense that Tiffany has been activated in my current life in any way, being able to label it in my mind. Oh, there's Tiffany again. She's hurt. She doesn't feel accepted. She's wanting love. Whatever it is that she's nagging about in that moment, giving her a name that's separate from me, it's not Nicole, helps me to understand that, oh, that's just separate from me. That Nicole is actually the person that I can cultivate the opportunity to make a new choice. So once I've named my ego, and I can get used to identifying my ego and her responses in my life, I can begin to dive a bit deeper. And I can ask myself, my ego is telling me a story that. We really want to explore the story that my ego is telling us. So I'm going to shift away from me and throw out a really global example that I think will resonate with a lot of you, which is a lot of our egos tend to tell us stories that our thoughts, our ideas, our work isn't good enough, right? So once I've dove down and I understand, oh, this is my ego, maybe she's critical in this moment, Tiffany's telling me all of the ways I'm not good enough, I can label that as Tiffany trying to protect me, right? And understand that that's where that's coming from. The story, if I were to believe the story, right, that my thoughts, my ideas, my work isn't good enough, how would I react? A couple ways. I might procrastinate. I might not show up at all. I might compare myself to a million other people. Obviously not comparing myself up, comparing myself down. I'm less than them, further evidence that I'm not good enough or not worthy in that way. Those are not helpful reactions to fulfill us maybe in the ways that we want to be fulfilled. Over time, if I release that story, right, if I can release the story of my thoughts, my ideas, my work not being good enough, I can make space for a new choice. A choice not to procrastinate. A choice to put my truth out into the world. A choice to stop comparing myself endlessly to others, and a choice to allow the authentic me, my light and my dark and everything in between to show up in this world. So before I end, this is a long time process. This does not happen overnight. But the more we come to the understanding of how our ego still functions in our life, because it does, the more we understand that it's protecting us. Our goal isn't to kill it or fight it away. It's not an intrusive thing that's happening to us. It's something that we can learn to work with, to separate from, and to make new choices so that we can show up more authentically in the world. I hope you found this helpful. I did write a blog on all things ego work as well that covers these. So for those of you who like something in the written form, I will link that down below so you can check that out as well.